Hello gamers, welcome back, or in case you are new here, I'm NKZL and I want to apologize for the clickbait title. We all should know by now, games can only kill themselves by not providing an enjoyable experience. But before you close this video, give me just a few seconds to explain the title. Amazon's game studio is in charge of publishing Throne and Liberty. In a recent interview with the producer of Throne and Liberty, we learned that as far as the developers of the game, NCSoft, are concerned, both the PC version and the console version are ready for release. Which raises the question, why is AGS unnecessarily delaying this game? Well, we don't have a conclusive answer to this question. One conclusion that a few people in the community have come up with is that Throne and Liberty will affect New World. Of course, this is because of their similarities, and as a result, New World will most likely see a considerable drop in players. Unlike NCSoft, AGS are clearly not releasing it during the Christmas holidays, when most people will be at home and have ample time to play. So they could be choosing to release it during a time when it will have the smallest impact on New World. This whole theory hinges on the fact that these two games have the same audience, so I thought it would be fun to compare them and see if one of them does anything better than the other, and at the same time see if there is any merit to this allegation. But before we delve deep into this topic, I would like to remind you to hit that like and subscribe buttons. It does help with the YouTube algorithm and it will keep you up to date with my content that is centered around MMOs and online gaming. With that reminder out of the way, let's get started. The first thing we are going to talk about is combat. On the surface, they have very similar systems. Both games have a classless system that governs combat and you can mix and match two weapons from a pool. But I think this is where the similarities end. New World is full action combat, while Throne and Liberty uses what is called a hybrid action combat. Despite their similar names, they are very different. Full action combat is a system where all attacks and abilities have to be aimed, while hybrid action combat is a form of tap targeting where a sizable amount of abilities and attacks will be automatically aimed at the target. What is directly tied to the combat system is the way you mix and match the weapons and abilities, and we can say that Throne and Liberty is objectively better because it offers a lot more freedom when it comes to these choices. While having more options can result in a confusing environment at first, I believe that once you overcome the initial abundance of choice, having more options results in a better overall environment. The reason why I mentioned the freedom of choice is because if you end up enjoying the combat in Throne and Liberty, this freedom will end up providing a better experience, and that is something to take into consideration. But I will not go further into each of these systems, since I don't want to waste your time, and at the end of the day, we cannot say which is better, because this is a purely subjective matter. Another element that is subjective is the graphical style. New World has a slightly stylized approach, while Throne and Liberty has a hyper-realistic one. Both of these games have absolutely gorgeous worlds, and the environmental team for both of them did a stellar job. The difference starts when we look at an element that is directly affected by the graphical style, and it is fundamental to MMORPGs. I'm referring to the player character. New World has a terrible character creator with limited options, and worst of all, most of the options are very peculiar. It is by far one of the worst character creators in the MMORPG genre. You can't even change the body type, so everyone just looks like a clone of each other. On the other hand, Throne and Liberty has a character creator that is rivaling Black Desert Online. And we have already seen some absolutely gorgeous and varied characters created in it. If you are interested, there are a dozen of videos out there showcasing it. So, because of how impactful this element is in an MMORPG, after all, your character is the most consistent element of your experience, being always there on the screen, I could confidently say that this is a massive win for Throne and Liberty over New World. I mentioned the gorgeous world of these two games, and I believed tied into this is the way we traverse and explore this world. When traversing of the world is slow, these landscapes become an eyesore. They become a reminder where we don't want to be. As a player, you become more and more focused on reaching your destination. the beautiful world becomes more and more irrelevant. So, having ways to move around the world at a decent pace eliminates this and allows you to stop and truly admire the world if you choose to. Recently, New World has added mounts, which massively help with the running simulator feel the game had, but when compared to Throne and Liberty, it simply falls short. In Throne and Liberty, you have ground, water and air forms, and even a grappling hook. And these elements are even used actively in combat, while in New World, you can't even use the mount in the one battleground it has, and you can't even swim. I think this is yet another aspect where Throne and Liberty is simply much better than New World. Since we're talking about the worlds of these two games, the last element that defines this world and is very important is the RPG element. After all, it is in the name of the genre. You might even be someone that doesn't care at all about the story in MMOs. However, if we look at the genre, it is clear that good stories have a massive positive impact on how well MMORPGs perform. So, even if this is not something of interest to you, you should be aware that this is an important element. New World had an extensive rework to the main story over time, and now it has a very good story by MMO standards. If we take a look at Throne and Liberty, it has a pretty minimal story in the form of few main quests. The main lore is delivered in over 300 pages that are scattered around the world. This forms a whole novel, an actual book that has been written about the world of Throne and Liberty. It might even end up being a pretty good read. The lore fanatics out there will most likely collect all of them. But I personally believe this is a very poor delivery method in a game, and Throne and Liberty falls short in this aspect. So, I believe when it comes to the lore and the story elements, New World will provide a much better and more immersive experience. All this stuff that I just mentioned, it's all very important, but even if important, it is background stuff, and what often takes the main stage in MMOs is the content you can experience. Content can be often split into three major categories: PvE, PvP and crafting. But in truth, often content is fluid and can involve multiple facets, like when you go to a dungeon and find crafting materials in it, or when you can PvP over an open world resource. Anyway, getting back to the subject, there is one thing that New World does much better than Throne and Liberty, and in all honesty, it does better than most MMORPGs. I am talking about gathering and crafting. Everything related to this is of the highest quality. It did and still does have some problems, but that is more or less related to the way gear work and not the crafting and gathering system themselves. Overall, I can honestly say that gathering and crafting in New World is one of the best of this type of content out there. On the other hand, Throne and Liberty will be a massive letdown for those that enjoy this kind of crafting and gathering content. It does have a basic aspect of it, but it's not as good, and at least for now, it is not enough. As impressive as the gathering and crafting content is in New World, their PvP content is equally poor. The game has one single battleground, a few arena maps, but neither of those have ranked or proper matchmaking. There is also open world PvP, but people quickly lose interest in it after every major patch. So maybe you can enjoy that for around 1 week every 3 months. And then there are castle sieges that is exclusive content to the top players that have the gear and are willing to put in the work to practice for them. Overall, the PvP content in New World is poor, and Throne and Liberty will provide vastly more avenues for PvP, and they even intertwine PvE and PvP content for those interested. Speaking of PvE content, New World has been out for 2 years, and you would expect it to have vastly more content than Throne and Liberty. Sadly, most of these 2 years have been spent fixing the mistakes and improving the content. It still has massive shortcomings when it comes to open world content, for example. Personally, I think it is safe to say they are evenly matched in this aspect, with one caveat that even during the test, people didn't get to experience all that Throne and Liberty has to offer. So, there is a very real possibility that the experience we will get at release will be better. Overall, depending on the kind of player you are, you might prefer the content in one of these games over the other. If you like crafting, then you will probably prefer New World. If you enjoy PvP and exploring the massive multiplayer side of things, you will most likely prefer Throne and Liberty a lot more. We can say that both games can deliver an enjoyable experience. However, and this is a big however, Throne and Liberty comes from NCSoft, which is an Eastern developer, and we can see in the overwhelming amount of cases Eastern developers deliver way bigger and more consistent updates to their games. While they might have comparable amounts of content, in the near future, I am fairly confident that Throne and Liberty will overtake New World in the first 6 to 8 months. But it's not all sunshines and rainbows, because it's NCSoft after all, and sadly, NCSoft has a reputation for over-monetizing their games. The truth is, they have a lot of experience in delivering a high-quality MMORPG, but at the same time, they have a history of implementing highly questionable monetization models. I don't want to be overly negative, and I believe everyone should be given the benefit of the doubt, especially when it comes to a new game. However, because of the history NCSoft has, I would advise caution around their products. Just like any other MMOs, there will be a way to pay to win. What I think is very important is that this pay to win does not become a road you are forced to walk upon to enjoy the game. To give a few examples, I believe BDO does pay to win the right way, while a game like Arcade or even NCSoft's Blade and Soul does it the wrong way. We should also mention what New World has. New World has by far the best monetization model in the MMORPG genre, and this is an undeniable positive. It is extremely cheap to play, and there is no way to directly pay to win. Of course, there are always real money traders. I think we touched on all the important points, so we should try and reach a conclusion. Overall, I always like New World despite its massive shortcomings. I even recommend it to others after their last expansion because I believe it can be an enjoyable experience. I believe New World could have been an extraordinary MMORPG, but sadly, they delivered only a decent one. And the developers' complete lack of experience in the MMO genre has taken a toll on the game. That being said, it's still a good MMO that I still believe can deliver a decent experience. When compared to Throne and Liberty, it does deliver a much better experience when it comes to the story, crafting and gathering, and most likely the monetization. However, I believe it falls short or barely keeps up in other aspects. Aspects that I believe are just as important to the MMORPG genre and in some cases fundamental to the experience, such as the character creator. I think Throne and Liberty will undoubtedly have an effect on New World's player base, and I believe it will see a drop in players when it releases. I will be honest, I started writing down ideas for this video thinking this conclusion was probably not true and that it wasn't very likely that they are delaying it because of New World. After thinking about it and examining the evidence, the similarities between the two games, I have convinced myself that this is most likely the case. The most likely reason why we don't get the release at the same time as Korea is because AGS does not want to lose profits from New World over the holidays. Most of the Western players will be at home over these Christmas holidays, and as a result, they will spend more time and money on games. NCSoft decided to release the game in Korea for this exact reason, because they want people to play and spend on their game. And I suspect the reason they said that as far as they are concerned, the game is ready when they could have kept quiet about it is because they are unhappy with AGS delaying the game. This is my conclusion. Do you agree with me? Feel free to let me know what your opinion on this topic is, and which game you prefer out of these two. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe. See you in the next one, gamers!